Welcome into the I-80 Boys College Football Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Christian Hunt, and that douche canal, hold on one second, let's see if I got it right over there, is...
I think I'm Frank Gore's jockstrap today because somebody insulted my ass last week on the episode. So I guess I am an old geriatric fuck. I think you brought that up several times. That's who I am. My name is no longer Chris. We'll keep it as that on the show though, just in case. So how's it going, Christian? What do you know, brother? What are we talking about today?
Man, well, today what we're going to do is we're going to end up getting into we're going to get into some of the best rivalries in college football. We wanted to kind of break that down, kind of have some different, takes there on the rivalries around college football. Before we get into that, though, Chris, I was really excited. I saw your actual. I got a present for you.
Oh shit! Is this like a DK Metcalf auto jersey? For your boy?
It's not that great. I wish it was that great. It is more like this. Your high school helmet of the team you played in high school, I actually got for you, brother. Yeah, I pulled some strings. I kind of had some people do some stuff.
Shit. What do we got here? That's about fucking right. You know, that's good shit, man.
I had to get like
real men play football in that.
Let me put this thing on. Hold on one second. Let me try this thing on so you can get a taste for what Chris wore back in the day and the amount of concussions that this guy probably had.
Dude, all you're missing is the crayons, dude. I mean, you're right there, bro. Oh shit. That's awesome, man. I was not expecting that today, dude. That was good shit. How'd you come by that?
I was scrolling through Amazon, and I may or may not have found that as one of the items listed on there. So I'll be honest, when I saw that, I said, we have definitely got to scoop that up.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome, man. That made my day. That was good stuff. I was not expecting that. That was good stuff.
Well, Chris,
let's good in it too, by the way.
Yeah, man. Listen, I feel like I probably would have played like fullback or some stupid shit like that, if, back in the day. There, had a fucking a C collar on.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you gotta have the neck roll and the whole fucking thing, dude. You would have looked like yeah. All you were missing was your crayons, though, right there. That was perfect. I love it, man.
All right, buddy. You ready to get into?
Yeah, let's get into it, man. Let's dig into this. Let's see what we got.
Perfect. So today, the top college football rivalries. Chris, when we talk about rivalries, what does it mean to you? What makes a good college football rivalry?
You know, man, with me personally, and like I said, this might vary from people or person to person, excuse me. But me, to be a rivalry, it's got to be, the team's got to be relevant. It's got to be not like back in the day when Nebraska used to beat the shit out of Kansas, that type of thing, right? For like 40 years. It needs to be something like the Ohio State, Michigan. I'm sure we'll touch on that, but where it's relatively even throughout time, right? Duke, North Carolina basketball is about as crazy as it gets. Also, you got to have something to play for. I know they play for trophies. They play for shit like that. That's a big part of it to me too. And personally, I add on to this, is I love two teams that literally hate each other, like fucking hate each other. To me personally, as a fan, man, I love it. I think that's what's so great about it. A little bit of John before the game, after the game. I'm not saying you got to do what Michigan State do, but I love when two teams really, truly don't like each other.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think that exactly like you said, a rivalry has to mean something, right? There has to be some tradition there. There has to be a natural reason that these teams don't like each other. And hey, even if it's superficial, there's some times where it's like, hey, back in 1867, we started playing football, and I don't like you because you wear red, and you don't like me because I wear blue, and that's it. I fucking hate you. I love it. And that plays into it. I think another big thing is, in recent history, has the game been meaningful? Has there been a lot of, conference championships maybe that have been on the line or that run through these games? Has it been a lot of national prevalence in there? Does it determine a playoff spot, seeding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I think that all kind of plays into part of it. It's kind of a loose thing there. There are certain games you look at and you start to say to yourself, man, it doesn't really mean a lot, but it's still a fun game to watch, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%, man. I can't really disagree with anything you said there. I think we're kind of on the same page on what a rivalry is to us. So we're going to dig into it, bud?
Let's dig into it here. Let's dig into it there, old jockstrap. So let's start the list off here. So to me, this has kind of had a special place here. Army and Navy. Kind of an interesting one, I feel as if. Well, I mean, what's your thoughts on Army Navy, Chris?
The history is crazy. What, 1890, I think, when this rivalry started. I believe the midshipmen, I think I got it wrote down here, lead 61-53-7 in that rivalry. That thing's been played a lot of fucking times, man. Actually, about 121 years worth. So that's a long time. I don't put it super high on the list is because this, like I said, you could probably speak more on this than I can, but in the national landscape of things, Army, Navy, like in college football, as far as, being rated and ranked teams and teams that are competing for Power 5 conferences, I think it kind of sucks that they don't get that probably luxury, but I would put them on the list as far as it is huge. I mean, I think Game Day goes there quite a bit too and does a game every so many years, right? I mean, it's a big deal. And like I said, it has nothing to do with anything with the military. It's just, man, that game to me, it's super important, but there's other ones that I would definitely put higher on the list.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, listen, as an Army veteran myself, I can say this. The Army-Navy game was kind of cool when I was in the service. It was kind of like, really, if I could say this, it was kind of just like a lot of hype leading up to the game. You talk that shit against your friends that are in the Navy, and then the game kicks off. You don't watch it. You check the score. Oh, we won. That's kind of how it is from, in today's standings. Probably back in the day, right? Back in the day, that was probably a huge, huge game. I can't say probably. It was a huge rivalry. And I mean, it has its own weekend, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like the Army-Navy game? Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's an interesting game, I think, year in, year out. But I don't know from a national ranking standpoint if it really has any merit in today's game.
Right. And like you said, you actually made a really good point there. I agree with you. I think it meant more probably back in the day. I bet that was probably back in the day easily a top 5 one. You know what I mean? Depending on who you talk to.
Yeah. I mean, and it was back in your day too, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I was already 65 years old when in 1890. So I'm still around. Must be doing something right.
All right. Next up on the list here, we've got Michigan State. Chris?
Yes, and I love this one, and I'm telling you why. Fucking hate each other. I mean, I think last year they had that fucking malice or whatever it is, the fucking brawl in the tunnel after the game. I'm not saying I don't condone that shit. That was taken way too far, but I've watched this game closely probably the last 6 to 7 years. Man, it is brutal. On-field fights before the game, John during the game. There've been some really close games. Some are a little bit controversial with the ref, even in some of these games. Michigan has had the upper hand a little bit here, but Michigan State, man, there is some bad blood between those two schools. And I actually think that rivalry, if I'm not mistaken, there's a lot of people trying to shut that thing down just because of what happened last year. I hope it continues to go on. I hope both those teams can kind of clean it up a little bit. But I love the competitiveness. I love the fact that those two schools hate each other. If Michigan State this year can be more relevant, and I think they will be, this game gets a lot of hype, man. There would be nothing more than Michigan State would love this year than to knock off Michigan.
Yeah, I think you said it exactly right. I mean, Mel Tucker, former Georgia and Alabama assistant coach, if I'm not mistaken, kind of going on and trying to lead Michigan State back to the promised land there. So it's basically Tucker versus Harbaugh. To me, I think, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of bad blood there. There's a lot of shit talking, and potentially, right? I mean, you never know. Maybe Mel Tucker and the gang, they can kind of get some things kind of going, and maybe they can kind of upset Michigan this year. That would make things sweeter. Now, of course, like you've said, you don't think that that's going to happen. You really like Michigan, but that's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother thing that we've already covered. So Well, let's get into this one right here. I'll kind of take center stage
Yeah.
on this one, Chris. I'll keep it parked over here for just a second. Texas versus Arkansas. So we did a previous video where we were talking about Texas and Oklahoma jumping for the SEC. And we were talking about some of the rivalries. And somebody in the comment section actually put down there that we were too young to remember Texas and Arkansas. And I think they made a really good point. You know, they kind of play every other year, or they play every so often. Texas, Arkansas, man. I mean, you're talking from a national standpoint, Jerry Jones. You know what I mean? What's that guy's name? God, he's a Dallas Cowboys coach, Jimmy Johnson.
Oh, Jimmy Johnson. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I think they all played there together at Arkansas, right?
I think you're right. That's actually really good history lesson there. That's a good one.
I mean, you've had Earl Campbell. You've had, you know, some of these guys that have played in the Texas Arkansas game. It just seems like a border war for those guys, right? Is it on that same? Go ahead.
No, do you think that changes now that Texas is going to join the SEC, right? So they should probably hopefully play each other more, right? I mean, depending on how they throw that all together.
Yeah, I think so. I think they are going to play more. I think that is going to possibly be an every year rivalry. Kind of like, to me, I liken it to this. I think it's going to kind of be like, and this is another good one, man. We probably should have put this on the list, but we didn't. LSU, Alabama. That's kind of the way I liken it to. I think that they'll play every year. I hope they do anyways. And, you know, hopefully it'll have a little bit of some meat in there. It'll have some juice to it.
100% agree. I don't have much to add really onto this. And like I said, I do appreciate the somebody coming in there and commenting on that. Like, we don't claim to know everything, obviously, but yeah, that is interesting. Like you said, probably was a border war type of thing, I'm assuming, you know. And I think with Texas joining the SEC, man, that'll probably come back, and we'll probably hear about this a lot more. I would assume it'll become bigger.
Absolutely. Moving on here, Pitt versus West Virginia, the backyard brawl, the Bush brothers delight. What do you think there?
Love it. I remember growing up watching this one, man. I believe Pitt leads that series. I think it was somewhere around like 61 to 40, but and they've been kind of dismantled, if I'm not mistaken, because West Virginia went over to the Big 12. Obviously, they don't get to play as much now. But I remember, like in high school and stuff, this was a big deal. West Virginia back in the, I don't say they're not trash now by any means, but like they were really good for the Pat McAfee days. They were Pac-Man Jones. I could name a bunch of guys. Tavon Austin. They had some studs over there. That program was really elite then. Pitt, Larry Fitzgerald, Aaron Darnold throughout those eras. I mean, Pitt was up there too, you know, on and off throughout the years. And I know those two teams do not like each other. And like I said, with this, hopefully with, you know, eventually if some changes here and they can start playing each other more, kind of renew that rivalry, I guess I'd use that word.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually watched this game this year. I think it was a Thursday night game, if I'm not mistaken. It was kind of a primetime game. It was a weekday game, and I remember watching it. I watched it mainly because, well, I was kind of calling the game early on, and I think they had Caden Slovis over there from USC who transferred in, and then also JT Daniels, you know, from Georgia transferred to West Virginia. And I mean, it was an interesting game. I mean, it was a very back and forth game. It came down to the end there, and they just Daniels threw an interception. And I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, it really actually wasn't even his fault. Like it hit his receiver's hands, bounced up, guy caught it, ran it back, and that was kind of that kind of actually turned the tide back in Pitt's favor. And then to end the game there, West Virginia ended up going all the way down the length of the field, got the ball pretty close inside the red zone, and just they couldn't score on a fourth down. So it was a really, really good game. I look forward to hopefully seeing more of that.
Yeah, no, I don't have much more to add to that, man. Like I said, I guess I didn't catch that game last year, but I do know there's some bad blood there between those two schools. So that's why it probably ranks where it does on our list.
Heck yeah. All right. Next up on the list here, USC and UCLA. Right, you know, hated rivals there, man. I mean, this is going to be very interesting because they are going over to the Big Ten. I don't want to keep saying the Big 12, but they are going to the Big 10. I mean, really, this is going to be interesting. I mean, this is an old school rivalry, right? This is an old school rivalry here.
1926, I believe.
Yeah. So this is going to be interesting to see this kind of continue. I mean, it almost has to with them kind of jumping conferences. I mean, really and truly.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think it was kind of a package deal. You know what I mean? Just because those two schools have been around forever. And I think they call it like the Battle of LA. And it's kind of funny because like growing up, mostly I remember USC, especially in my high school days of 2004 and there. USC was just so dominant through that era there for about 8 to 10 years. The Reggie Bush days, Matt Leinart, all those guys. I mean, they just destroyed UCLA. I mean, there was like no chance. UCLA was kind of down. And I remember early in the 90s when they had like Troy Aikman, they were like really, really good. So it's kind of funny how this one's it's like a team wins like 12 in a row and then, it flip-flops, And like you said, yeah, coming over to the Big Ten, man, hopefully UCLA seems like they're getting better, So I like I said, USC is supposed to be super good this year. So, and like you touched on again is, man, this game's been around for a long fucking time.
Yeah, absolutely. It has. Kind of moving on here. Another one at the show that we're probably not as, astute to, but we wanted to throw it in there just because I think it's it's kind of a thing where it's a brotherly hate kind of thing. Clemson, South Carolina. If I'm not mistaken, didn't South Carolina pull the upset off last year against Clemson?
I think so. I think your boy Spencer Rattler, I think he did pull that off, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know a ton about this rival. I'll be the first to admit I really, truly don't. But I South Carolina should be decent this year. Clemson's kind of been up and down the last couple of years, really not knowing what to do. We got rid of DJ. I could see this coming around, and I think Clemson's definitely going to be better this year. I know we're talking about rivalries over time here, but I'd like to see this one. I need to get a little bit more info on this one. I know I've heard people talk about this game, and I can't remember what they call this game, the Palomado or whatever the hell it is game or something like that. It's like a battle of whatever the hell it's called. There's a nickname for it, like most of these, but this game is like I said, I think they need it to be a good rivalry because the ACC, I think, needs a little more credibility. I hate to say that, but other than Clemson the last couple of years, it's I think it's pretty much up for grabs now. You got UNC in there, Clemson. I think South Carolina will make some noise this year too. They bring back some people, and then along with Florida State.
Yeah, it's called the Battle of the Palmetto State is the name of it. No, I had to look that up, so don't worry.
No, I knew it was something like that. I didn't know off the top of my head, but
yeah, and you go back and you think about it. I mean, the rich history here. Dabo has been over at Clemson. He's built them up to a really good program. You go back to South Carolina. You think about really and truly. You go back to South Carolina. Steve Spurrier, the old Gamecock himself. Yeah. It kind of had some weird years there under Muschamp and some different coaches and whatnot. But they're kind of getting back right under Beamer. I like what Beamer can do. This is going to be an interesting thing because look, really and truly, South Carolina and Clemson. This is going to be a high-scoring affair, in my opinion, this year. I think it's last year, so yeah. You said say that again. Their offense was bad last year.
No, I mean Clemson's defense was terrible last year. I don't think South Carolina's was much better. I mean, I'm with you. I think there's going to be a lot of the ACC reminds me a lot of the Big 12. A lot of offense. You know what I mean? The teams that can put up some points.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a lot of offense. But yeah, like you said, I mean, it's just going to be a situation where, and Clemson lost some of the best parts of its defense last year. So this is going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. Moving on, the love triangle. That is Florida State versus Miami versus Florida. Throw it any way you want. Florida, Miami, Florida State, Miami, Florida State, and Florida. You name it, that's kind of how it goes. I wanted to put this in there just because it was too hard to kind of write it all these different kind of ways, right? So here's the reality of it. I like it. I mean, the Florida schools, they definitely hate each other. The Florida State, Miami, that was a very 80s kind of rivalry, I feel like. That was the rivalry of the 80s. Florida and Miami and Florida State, that to me, if I'm thinking about it, I mean, I know obviously they played each other for a while, but I think the relevance of it started to become a lot more relevant back in the 90s. I think is when it started to really, really heating up.
Oh, 90s for sure. And I'm gonna interject here. When I was, before high school, junior high, grade school, man, I remember watching these two teams because of like Florida State, they were both rated always in the top 10 every fucking year. You know what I mean? And it was like this big deal was, I could name the quarterbacks all through that era, but like it was crazy, Spurrier's teams there were crazy good, with Grossman. They had, God, this name's just slipping my head or my mind right now, but they put up, Spurrier was an innovative offensive mind, always had some crazy fucking quarterback back there to sling it all over the field. Man, in Florida State, I remember watching the wide right field goals. You remember that whole deal? Hearing about that? But you remember those games? Bobby Bowden, historic coach. Those games back, I miss those rivals. I remember tuning in. I was a Nebraska fan. We were crazy good then. I remember always having to watch, those rivalries. You can throw Miami in there too. Don't get me wrong. Like you said, they freaking all hate each other. I bet 99.9% of the rosters were all Florida kids anyway. So they played, probably played against each other in high school and stuff like that. There was a lot on the line there, man. And this one's one of my funnest rivalries. I love those rivalries. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it is. It's kind of like it's like a backyard brawl almost with those guys down there. They hate each other, and it almost always kind of, in the 80s and 90s, it always, and really the early 2000s too, it really meant something whenever those three kind of got together. Moving on here, we've got Ole Miss versus Mississippi State College. You said the Egg Bowl, right?
I did. Yeah, this Good. One man, there's some bad blood between these two schools too. You got Elijah Moore doing the dog pissing thing, and been a lot of good players especially. I think this to me, this rivalry's heated up the last 10 years. I think there's been a lot of big names come out of these schools now. These two especially, like wide receivers, I could name a few. But I think this game is getting more and more chippy. I watched it last year, and I love it. It kind of reminds me of the Florida State games in the 90s a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, the Ole Miss, Mississippi State, I call it really the Bag Bowl, because if you've been around college football at all, you know that those allegedly, there was some anonymous boosters that were kind of, handing out money through bags when Laramie Tunsil.
Well, yeah, you remember that whole draft class. Was it Ole Miss where they had 5 of the top 25 players all commit like same 2 days? Yeah, there's a little money going around down there.
Yeah, and they were, and I hate it. I really do hate it, because we lost Mike Leach, who was one of, to me, he was one of the most interesting coaches in college football. The guy was kind of like the mad scientist of college football, man. So I hate that he lost it. He he definitely added to this rivalry. They've got the Lane Train over there at Ole Miss. I heard something too, and this will be something we'll kind of get into on another show as well. But, what, if you don't mind me saying, do you think Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin's kind of like really about as good of a coach as they're probably going to get, man, right?
I would think so. A lot of people have mixed feelings about that guy. I think he's kind of one of those guys, either you love him or hate him type of guy. You know what I mean? And I like him. He does relate to the college athlete very well. He's a player's coach. I think that's why he has some of the success that he's had. Ole Miss to me, man, he fits that program well to me. He's gotten some really good talent down there. He's put some guys in the NFL that are pretty damn good too, man. Like, I'm with you. I do agree with that statement. As much as I like disagreeing with you, I have to agree with you on that one.
Nah, I don't like it. Like I said, he's got that confidence about him. I don't know, man. It's cockiness, right? But he's. I'll be honest, man. Hate the game, not the player, bro. He's entertaining as hell. All right, we're gonna get into my territory here. Okay, Georgia versus Florida. Now, again, I just want to confirm this for everybody kind of listening here. Okay, give me just a second here. I just want to show everybody, just in case you don't know who it is. I know we've got some people from Florida that kind of watch our stuff every now and again, right? So just in case you're wondering who my team is, the real double 2-time back-to-back national champs. Actually, it's more than 2 times. I know. Get the fuck out of here. But now that we got that kind of intro out of the way, let's say this: Georgia, Florida, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I'll drink to that while you
they're not allowed to say that anymore. Didn't they change that? back in
Yeah, they did, but listen, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit in the world that they've changed that, you know what? It is what it is.
No, I'm with you, Christian. I'll let you speak on this a little bit more about like what it means to you. You're a Southern boy, so I know I've known this since I was little that these two teams just don't like each other, and there's usually some pretty big implications on the line every single time. Florida, I will say, not to piss off the fucking Florida people here, but I know they've been down the last few years. And Georgia's been kicking the shit out of pretty much everybody. That's why they are the 2-time back-to-back national champions. I'm sure that makes you. Yeah, look at this guy. It gets half a heart on here on air. But you know what? I can't. I would brag about it too. So I'll kick it over to you, Christian. I mean, what's this thing mean to you guys, you Georgia fans? You guys truly hate those Florida boys, or how's that play out?
I think it was, oh God, I think it was 07, 08, 09, somewhere in there. It was when Matthew Stafford was still on the team. I remember we beat Florida, okay, but when we scored that first touchdown on them, the entire team ran out and stomped on that fucking end zone, dude. It was glorious. They ended up beating Florida that year. It was when they had Tebow, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, shit, yeah.
It was a whole thing. You know, it's been kind of a weird thing. The Urban Meyer years, Urban kind of had our number there for a while. And then after Urban left, I mean, Georgia has kind of really stepped up and really done it. Outside of 1 year with old asshat Dan Mullen, who I'm not high on, not because he was a Florida coach, just because he's just a douchebag, in my opinion. Right?
That guy, yeah.
Yeah. But my whole thing with it is Georgia's kind of taken back over control of the rivalry. It's always fun to go back and forth with it, though, and kind of see what can happen. I mean, that's an environment. It's a neutral site game. They've talked about trying to move it to more, homes, like home stadiums.
What's your thoughts on that as this rivalry? This rivalry is pretty goddamn old. I think 1904. I mean, something like that. That thing's been going on for a long time.
I could see it either way. I mean, I would be okay if they moved it to like a home and away kind of thing, like actual sites there, because it's played in Jacksonville. I mean, it really, I don't know. I'm cool. I would be cool if they moved it to a home and away. You know what I mean? Seriously, made it like a night game. Man, wouldn't that be awesome? The old Georgia Florida at night.
Yeah, that'd be fucking huge. I could see that. No, I was just curious. Your thoughts on it, since, like I said, you're a big time Georgia fan. So, I don't have much. I don't have much to add to that, bro. I mean, you pretty much covered it there. What do we got? What we got next here?
We'll keep it. Yeah, exactly. We'll end it there. Go Dogs. Next up, we've got USC and Notre Dame.
Oh,
Chris, what do you think?
Baby, 1926. This fucker is crazy, even though they're not in the same goddamn conference. I love how they schedule the game every year. This thing is like, I remember this with like my dad talking about these two schools when I was younger, and we could sit here for hours and go through the history of both, Notre Dame and USC and all the accolades and championships and bowl appearances and Rose Bowl, all that shit. These two schools are just some of probably the top 5 biggest fucking names in college football, and still are and have been forever. So I don't have a ton to say, man. I do remember the Reggie Bush days, the Bush push, as they called it, against Brady Quinn, your boy over there at Notre Dame. That whole controversy, but it's always been a good rivalry, man. I always tune into that fucker. Love watching the two crowds, man, just because there's somebody, whoever's losing, there's always so much, at stake, and that's what makes a good rivalry, man.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, like you said, it was the Bush push. I mean, it goes all the way back. Catholics versus it was Catholics versus convicts, but still, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, it's always an interesting rivalry. I feel as if between them, I mean, it just goes way, way back. And even now, I mean, it means something. I mean, they always play for something out there.
Yep. So,
it's a historic rivalry. I like it. I'm for it. I'm ready to get on to the next one. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All righty. Let's jump into it here. Oklahoma versus Texas. Who you got in this one, Chris? If you had to pick one, who you got?
Who do I got? I mean, who's going to win this one this year? That is a tough fucking question. I know you're high on Oklahoma and McKenzie Milton, I believe, this year. I'm going to take Texas, but I have watched this game for the last 28 years at least, every year. And this game is always, I believe they call it the Red River Shootout. This thing is nuts. I remember when Nebraska was back in the Big 12, and this game still took precedent over everything, man. This game is nuts. It doesn't matter some years who there might be a team in there with 3 wins and somebody's, undefeated and they win, or it's always a high scoring game. It seems like too lately. Yeah, crazy rivalry. This is one, I don't know how anybody would leave this out of your top 5. Lot of great players in this game every year too on both sides. It has been forever. You know what I mean? Usually got some crazy wide receiver matched up with some, NFL DB. I mean, on both sides of the ball. It's just 2 good quarterbacks every year that are, you know what I mean? There's just a lot riding on this game. I like I said, this one's big to me. I would put this in, even if we were doing like our personal own, whatever top, 12 or 10, rivalries, this one would be super high for me. Maybe it's because I'm coming out of the Big 12 with Nebraska, but this game is awesome to watch. If you don't watch it, man, you're crazy.
No, I absolutely agree. I think Oklahoma and Texas, again, historic rivalry. To me, my dad grew up a huge Longhorn fan. I kind of grew up. Believe it or not, that's actually kind of what got me into football. Was the Texas USC game? The Rose Bowl, the greatest game ever played, arguably. Back in the day. And so then I started following Texas after that. And so you start getting into the Texas, the Oklahoma version of it. All the history of both those programs, like you said, the Barry Switzers, the the Mac Browns, and just so on and so on and so on. I mean, man, both of these teams have had such, tradition and history rich seasons kind of leading up to this. It really is going to be a shootout. To me, I like Texas this year, by the way. I'm high on Oklahoma. I'm high on Dylan Gabriel, but man, I can't go against the Longhorns. Hook them.
Yeah, I got to agree with you on that one. Like I said, I do think this game will be really, really, really tight, though, this year. I really do. I think Oklahoma is going to be much more improved.
All righty, moving right on. Now, this is where we get into one of the best rivalries in the sport, arguably, and that is Bama versus Auburn. Brother, what do you think about that?
Love it. 1947, I believe, was the first game. I think we don't really have to explain to the audience or people that this game means anything. This thing is crazy. What the hell do they call that? The nickname where that kid was the kick or the pick six or the kick 6 or whatever, where he returned. I was one of the happiest moments of my life, man. And I'm not even a fan of both these teams. That was so great, crazy, dude. No, I mean, this game is nuts. I'm not from Bama. I would love to be there to watch that game personally. I've heard from several celebrities that have come through there, athletes, everybody I know says that thing is a crazy football game. Like, it's everything for the state. I mean, that game means more than, I would say, arguably winning a national championship most years over there. You know what I mean? If Auburn can beat Bama or Bama beats Auburn, at least we beat Bama. You know what I mean? Like, that's a huge, huge deal. What do you got for me, Christian, since you're such a big SEC guy?
Listen, man, I think you're exactly right. And the fun thing about that rivalry, Bama-Auburn, is, excuse me, but the fun thing about this rivalry is it doesn't matter what is going on year in, year out. Whether Alabama's undefeated and Auburn is, 5-4, whatever have you, 5-5 at that point of the season, it's always an interesting matchup when they get together because you never know who's going to win. And it can be vice versa. It can be flipped on its axis. Auburn could be undefeated and Bama could be having a down year. They really do play each other very well. And for me, I don't see that changing anytime soon. They hate each other. They do not like each other. I mean, houses are divided. I mean, what did they have that guy? There was that Alabama fan that poisoned Auburn's tree or whatever have you.
That was a big fucking deal. They wrote like a 30 for 30 on that damn thing.
Yeah. I think that guy's name's Harvey Updike or something like that.
Yeah, there you go.
So, I mean, again, to me, it's one of really the more interesting rivalries, and they're not really that far away from each other in the grand scheme of things. It's kind of right down the road. So, yeah, Bama, Auburn, to me, it's up there, and it always means something too. Like I said, I love it when those guys get together.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add to that, man. That's one of the most watched games in any college sport. Hell, you probably put up there with the pro game too. I mean, honestly, that Bama Auburn game is super fun to watch. Like you said, records don't mean a fucking thing in that game.
Yep, absolutely. So moving on to the last one, the absolute best rivalry game in all of college football. Ohio State versus Michigan.
You damn right. And like I said, we're in the Big Ten now, but Big 12, but being over in this part of the country here, man, this game, dude, is nuts. And I think why and I don't want to, sit there and discredit Alabama, Auburn, Texas, Oklahoma, any of these other rivalries that we brought up, right? They're rivalries for a reason. They made this list for a reason. But this game here, for some reason to me, and maybe it's just me personally, takes precedence because there's always something on the line every fucking year for this game. Always. In my lifetime, almost every time. Like, it's always one team is at least undefeated and trying to make the playoff or make back in the day the BCS title game. There's always something. There's so much riding on that. Now, I don't even have to get into how much these two schools hate each other. I mean, you see it everywhere. Every athlete in the planet, Tom Brady, he tweets like a mofo during this time of year, when they play each other, because he's a big Michigan boy, obviously, right? Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Like, these two schools really hate each other, and they always have something to play for. And I'll kick it over to you here in a second. But I have both these schools being undefeated when they play each other this year. And you thought I was just a total asshat for saying something like that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, first of all, I think you're an asshat in general. That's neither here nor there. Let me just say this. Hold on one second. Now you've got me curious, because we put a bet on this, didn't we? We bet on this game this year. Yeah. Let me just grab it here. Okay, so we did bet on the Michigan-Ohio State game. We've got a truffle shuffle beer chug.
Baby.
Yeah. I said I think Ohio State will be undefeated going into that game. And I think Michigan will have, I think I said 2 or 3 losses somewhere in there. I kind of went back and forth, as I'm as the off season's kind of wearing on. Give me Michigan with 2 losses. Yeah, I can change my opinion. Truffle shuffle beer chug. So yeah, this is, to me, is what makes this so interesting about this rivalry, Chris. And that is, when the rivalry comes around, Ohio State, fans, they don't do anything with M's, right? They cross the M's out. They don't use them. It's kind of like the Bloods and Crips, right? They just they just don't fuck with one another.
Nope, love it. That is a great comparison.
So, and same thing, right? I mean, one wears red, one wears blue. But no, and the other side of it too is Michigan. I think they don't do anything with O's at the same time. So yeah, to me, it always means something. I think they have, a couple of top 5 matchups, not just a couple, but I mean, most of the time it's a top 10 matchup every time they play each other. Now, you did allude to this back when the BCS was still a thing. Man, it always felt like it meant so much when they played. Now, it still means something when they play, but it just means a little less than what it did back in the BCS. Because I mean, hell, they both made it to the playoff this year.
Yeah, no, which I don't think it happens very often unless you're like an SEC team. We've seen that a couple times, both 2 SEC schools, especially Alabama, Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. I do have an interesting stat for you, Christian, since you're a stat whore, but I was just doing a little research today, and I didn't, this surprised me. Maybe this doesn't surprise you, but just to show the sheer dominance between these two schools in the Big Ten, Ohio State's got 39 Big Ten titles. Michigan has 42. That is dominance out of a game that's probably been started back in the, I don't even remember the first rivalry, but early 1900s at least. You know what I mean? That's crazy, man. Like, actually, I would say it's probably, absolutely. It's probably over 100 years old. But I mean, think about that. I mean, these two schools, there's always, that's my point, is they always got something on the line, whether it's a Big Ten title, whether it's, playing for a national championship now, getting into the playoff. It's crazy.
Yeah, man, I actually did not know that. I mean, they've, like you said, they've ran the Big Ten. So, yeah,
sure. Goes through them.
That kind of does surprise me, but at the same time, it does not. Because if you think about them from a historic standpoint, well, I think this is going to end it right here for the college football rivalry side of it. But now this kind of brings up another interesting question, Chris, and that is our hot take segment that we really like to throw around here.
My favorite part.
Now you're Now, remind me, who is your favorite college football team again, Chris?
That would be the University of Nebraska Cornhuskers, baby, all day.
Very, very nice. Very, very nice. Now, do they have a new coach, and is there something going on?
They do. They brought in Matt Rule, who I have changed my opinion on a little bit. And I wonder where you're going with this, but no, I will explain to the audience that, yeah, we did bring him in. He has done a hellacious job recruiting. I will say that. He has brought in some boys. Nebraska has struggled as of quite a fucking while now. And what I would love to see is a successful season this year. Nebraska's schedule is very favorable. I know we got ourselves probably a quarterback controversy. Is that where you're going with this?
It absolutely is. I was going to say our hot take segment. I wanted to build it up in a crescendo there. Hot take: Nebraska has a legit quarterback controversy. Now, before we start getting off the rails here, I do want to kind of do one thing here real quick so we understand where this came from. There's been a lot of grumblings out there, right? And this is an article that was published by The Athletic. Go check it out. It says, between Jeff Sims and Casey Thompson as Nebraska QBs, who starts for Matt Rule? And to me, I personally didn't think this was, I don't know. I didn't think there was a controversy until I started seeing this. And then I got to thinking. Your thoughts, Chris?
My thoughts on this, I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be right to the point. I don't think there is. I will hand it back over to you here in a minute, but Casey Thompson, I believe this is his fifth year, right? I mean, he played at Texas for a couple years, came over last year. I believe he had 17 touchdowns. I did not like the 10 interceptions. He also was hurt at the end of the season here and there, which didn't help anything. And we really fucking struggled on offense without him. I know who Jeff Sims is. Dynamic athlete, the kick and run. He's got some experience under his belt as well. But to answer your question, I do not think it's a legit quarterback controversy. Casey came back. He didn't have to. I think Casey's the better thrower of the football when given time. And I think this is where I put Casey in my top 10 quarterbacks this year of college football. I put him at 10. I know you damn near, if not shit your pants and thought I was crazy, but I think he's going to have a big year this year, man. I know, and I had to throw him in there because I'm a Nebraska fan and I'm an optimistic person here with this shit, but he's going to be all right, dude. Like I said, he needs to cut it down on the turnovers this year, and the offensive line has got to get a hell of a lot better. It can't be much fucking worse than it was last year. It was god-awful. Run game was trash. When we did throw the ball, it was to one guy. We all know who that was, in Trey Palmer. We're going to have to spread it around a little bit this year, and I think Casey's going to do that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points. If you'd asked me this a couple of months ago or a couple of weeks ago even, I probably would have said, yeah, no, they don't have a legitimate quarterback controversy here. Now, I think they do.
Whoa.
I really think they do. Call it
why, Christian? Bring it to me real, buddy.
I will absolutely bring it to you real here. You ready for it?
Yeah.
Where was Matt Rule at before he was here?
The Panthers.
He was with the Panthers. Now, am I mistaken in thinking he brought in a guy in PJ Walker there? Now, he coached him in college.
Yeah.
At Temple. Now, PJ Walker, if you had to give me, you're an NFL guy. I know you are. What do you think? What does PJ Walker do really well?
Motherfucker can run. He's I would call even almost a subpar to average passer. He is a dynamic athlete, though.
Absolutely. He definitely is. He is a dynamic athlete. Now, the guy that's in question here, one Jeff Sims, another really good athlete.
Very similar.
They like to run a very easy, simple concept, okay? They like to run an RPO style. You got to kind of be able to read and kind of make a lot of these little quick decisions with the RPO game. Casey Thompson, I mean, he's an athlete too. I'm not going to sit there and knock him. He can run around and he can throw the ball downfield. Again, I think Jeff Sims, if I'm not mistaken, now this says Georgia Tech, obviously, but they haven't switched everything over, as he is coming over from Georgia Tech yet. But I think, to me, Jeff Sims kind of fits the mold for what he wants. I really, really do.
I could see your side here. I could see it, Christian. I think with Casey coming back, I do know there was a tweet by Casey Thompson, which is kind of awesome because I think that these two are going to battle it out a little bit. And that's good. I want competition in between, the school itself, right? At a position. I think competition doesn't hurt anybody, even if it's within the same team, right? I just don't see how Jeff Sims, man, you said it, touched on it 100%. Very comparable to PJ Walker in a way. Kick and run. He is. I've watched him at Georgia Tech. Fucking dude can run and run that RPO, and he runs it well. But Casey Thompson is a 10 times better passer than he is when given time. Casey's not the athlete he is. I will say that. But I'm going to disagree with your segment on this, or your take, I should say. And that's okay. But I'm going to blow you out the doors here this year with Casey Thompson, bro. He's going to put up some points. We're going to put up some points as a team. He's going to have a hell of a season this year. You just write it down, put it on the back burner, and you'll be owing me quite a bit of beer at the end of the year.
First of all, listen here, bitch. I want bottles. We can do beer too. That's fine. You know what I mean? We just got to make sure that it is low calorie because we are training for a combine. But here's the reality of the situation, because we're not quite done with this segment yet. I want to throw this out there at you. Now, looking at this angle, from Nebraska, we're talking about Casey Thompson and whether, he is injured right now, right? So he is not going through spring training full contact and will not participate in the spring training game, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Good point. You are right.
So if anything, Jeff Sims has a chance to kind of get a good grasp on this offense and get the actual, physical reps. I mean, mental reps, don't get me wrong, they're important, but you actually have to be getting those physical reps. You have to go live. I don't know, man. I think I'm thinking this is a legitimate quarterback controversy, more so than I would say Texas's, Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers is.
Right.
I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think Jeff Sims ends up, I'm not going to say he's going to beat him out, but I think he's going to play pretty early, and this is going to be pretty interesting.
No, and you bring up a very good point, man, which I will give you some credit for. I don't usually give you credit because I think you're a sad sack of shit. But with that being said, though, yeah, with him being a little bit injured, and I didn't figure that into the equation, it's a new offense, a new coach, right? Casey's basically in the same position Jeff Sims is, if you think about it. Now Casey's got a little bit more rapport with the receivers because he's been here longer. But I agree with you on that. I will give you that. I might have been a little bit off on my take, but I still think Casey Thompson's still just a better quarterback. And we ain't going to know until week one and maybe see some of the spring game coming up. But, what kind of offense he wants to run or implement. I will say with my history with Matt Rule at Baylor and Temple and, even with the Panthers, he does like to run the ball. He also likes to run that RPO style. That's what he did at Baylor mostly, and was relatively successful with it. So it will be interesting to see. I guess, time will tell with this one, but I'll get you that frou-frou drink that you need at the end of the year if I lose.
Listen, that sounds good to me. All righty. So wrapping up the show here, we are going to kind of do one more thing here. There is a segment that we try to kind of, we've started implementing a little bit here, and that is our toxic comment.
Yes.
Of the week, right, man? This one we actually have a special one that happens. So again, anytime we put these videos out, we put clips out and stuff like that. If there's ever a somebody puts a comment on there and it's toxic, we like to kind of bring it up and just kind of give our own thoughts on it. Here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah.
This is from Crixus1123. Who's this geriatric looking clown? Think he is putting Frank Gore Jr. top 5. Bro must have had a hard on for his dad or something. First of all, this is what I have to say to that. Okay, this is really what I have to say. Hold on one second here, Chris. You give me just a minute here, buddy.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Guy.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, who the fuck
is
this guy? For one, call me a geriatric fuck. Now, I know he stole that from you. I believe it was our third podcast, Call Me Old, and you've been doing it ever since. Now, I know you're going to be a little embarrassed here in this combine when I, out-rep you 2 reps, 225. We definitely know who's winning that 40 time. And then we gotta toss the old pigskin around here and see who can throw it further. Now, I know you're an ex-quarterback, but so was Jared Lorenzen. So, you know what, man? This guy was, if anybody watched, go back to our last week's podcast and check out our top 5 running backs. I put Frank Gore Jr. up there at number 5. The guy rushed for like 380 million yards his last game, 16 yards a carry. I like this kid this year. He's only, I think he's going to be a junior. I did like his dad. I didn't have a hard on for his dad, but I did like his dad in the NFL. Played forever. The guy was an Iron Man. So I guess I don't know what to say to this dude, but other than, dude, you need to go check your stats and get your shit straight, dude. I mean, this kid does have a chance to legitimately get up there. There's a lot of good backs this year, but I had to throw Frank Gore Jr. in there, man. I know he plays, where does he play? Like Southern Miss, I think.
Yeah.
Not probably the most, he's going to put up some numbers there. I will say he doesn't play in a Power 5, but, there's been a lot of good running backs to come outside the Power 5 in the NFL. So what do you got to say there, Christian? I'm sure you love this.
Well, first of all, the first thing I have to say to that is,
who the fuck is that guy?
The next thing that I have to say to that is I 100% agree with this guy. I like him already. Listen, I like him already, and I like what he's saying. He identified right off the bat that you are, in fact, a geriatric fuck. Okay, he didn't say that, but I inferred it, that you are old. The second thing is, look, Frank Gore Jr., great. But like I talked about in the last segment, the level of competition that he's playing against, I can't put him in the top 5 just because of that. Do I think he's a top 20, 30 running back? Yeah, sure, whatever, I can do that. I think he's talented. I think he could potentially have a good career in the NFL given the right opportunity. I just think, again, against the competition that he's played against, what has he done? I mean, he's dominated against them, but what would he do if he was playing in the SEC or the Big Ten every week?
Fucking dominate like his dad did at Miami.
Come on, bro. Just like his dad, you guys, just fucking old as shit, dude. Come on now.
Oh, Jesus, dude. Fucking cock on the cock on this guy and the cock on you, man. God damn.
Oh, shit.
That's a good way to end the week, though, man. I love it.
I like it too, guys. Listen, we're going to be coming at you live again. We're going to try to get back at this again next week. So, again, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys later.
Peace.